Is Latin a good foundation for future Romance language study? We're going to investigate that today. Hi, I'm Emily Weiss, host of Latin Storytime, where I help you introduce your child to the Latin language through diglot, or two language forms of classic children's stories. In this series, I'm investigating some of those commonly listed benefits that you'll see for why you or your child should study Latin. Are these actually reasons for studying Latin, or are they just benefits? If you haven't already, take a look at the first video in this series so you'll understand the difference. One of the most common and kind of logical things on these lists of benefits of Latin is that it prepares you for future Romance language study. And it makes sense to us because the modern Romance languages are the linguistic descendants of or children of Latin. So you'll see these very interesting family trees or lists of here's a Latin word and then here are all of the modern Romance languages and how they use some derivative of that word in their language. The other convincing thing is that Latin's grammar is closer to modern Romance languages grammar than English's. So what I mean by that is that Latin is what we call a highly inflected language. That means that Latin words will change their endings or their forms for many different purposes. Whereas in English, we do it very occasionally. For example, the difference between singular and plural, dog versus dogs, we add an S on so that we're talking about more than one dog. But with Latin, this is done to a much greater extent. Latin's highly inflected, English is weakly inflected, and modern Romance languages are moderately inflected. So it makes sense that if you, as an English-speaking person, become familiar with a highly inflected grammar, that a moderately inflected grammar like that of a modern Romance language will be a piece of cake. But does the evidence bear out? Are there actually studies that have been done that show that Latin is a benefit to you in learning a Romance language? I'll provide links below to some specific studies that go into this question. And to summarize, there's not particularly strong evidence that Latin does provide a benefit. So in some studies, it does provide a benefit, but that's only in the first year of Romance language study, not in subsequent years, or there's no evidence that it provides a step up in your later ability to achieve full fluency. In fact, there was a very interesting study done in the early 2000s of native German language speakers who then went on to take a Spanish course. And the students who had had French prior to taking Spanish did better than those who had had Latin before taking Spanish, which suggests my next point, that this benefit, even if it is a true benefit of Latin, is not unique to Latin. If all of these Romance languages share similarities because they're directly descended from Latin, then learning one modern Romance language will provide some benefit to you in learning another. Therefore, this can't be a very solid reason for taking Latin. If you want to learn a Romance language, a particular Romance language, then you should study that language. If you want to learn more than one Romance language, your best bet would be to start with one and then learn others, instead of taking extra time to learn Latin first. Now, knowing Latin, it's interesting linguistically to see these connections, but you can make those connections without having spent time learning Latin. Therefore, I don't recommend this as the reason you should do Latin. Now, if you have to do Latin or you want to do Latin before pursuing a modern Romance language, then I would recommend that you become familiar with some of those important root words and the derivatives of them in modern Romance languages. A good resource for that would be in the Wheelock's Latin textbook. While it's not good for every age, in the chapters, they have lists of here are Latin vocabulary that we've gone over, and then here are their derivatives in multiple different Romance languages. So that could be an interesting resource for you. Also, become familiar with and comfortable with the inflected grammar. And finally, what I would also suggest is adding a supplement of, if not an emphasis on, conversational Latin. The ability to not just understand the grammar and translate and decode, but become comfortable with the process of learning a language orally, being able to listen to it and understand it and respond to it. because that is obviously an incredibly important component in learning a modern Romance language. And if you are uncomfortable with that, moving from Latin to a modern Romance language, then you may not make an easy transition. So in conclusion, don't take Latin because you want to learn a Romance language. So why should we do Latin? Don't worry, we'll get to an answer. Thanks for joining me today, and I'll see you in our next installment. Bye.